pleased to bring you two speakers. We have Ivo Terra. He's moderating today. Mark, is it Asquith? Is that
That's
right?
good.
Okay,
Close
good
enough.
For
enough.
curiosity, how do you pronounce it?
It's Asquith.
Asquith.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming to us, as you can probably tell from his accent, from England. Phoenix Startup Week's expanding in all ways this year. So they're going to be talking to you about creating experiences that inspire loyalty. So I'm just going to get myself off here and take all the questions. Be sure to tweet and do all the things on social. Hashtag PHX Startup Week. Take it away, guys. Have fun.
Hey, thanks very much, Kate. Appreciate that. And hi, everybody. Welcome to the conversation. As mentioned, my name is Ivo Terra. I am coming to you from Midtown Phoenix, right around 7th Avenue and Osborne. Don't stalk me, please. But you can go hang out. We can't go hang out. It's a pandemic. There's nobody to hang out. And I'm joined by my very good friend, Mr. Mark Asquith, all the way from Sheffield, England. Say hello, Mark.
Hello there. I'm going to come and stalk you now.
Yeah, I appreciate that if you would. And you and I, my friend, have been tapped to have a conversation that is called Creating Experiences That Inspire Loyal Communities. You and I both have experience in building communities around a variety of things. And so we're going to have a conversation about that. I've got a few questions here, and then plus you and I know each other so well, we could talk about this stuff all day long, but we only have 50 minutes. But I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for questions. So of the 51 people that are currently watching the two of us yokels live, if you do have any questions, please put them in the questions section, and someone from the Phoenix Startup Week world will throw those over to us, and we will get a chance to work them in there. We don't have a presentation scheduled. We're just going to chat. It's a fireside chat on the idea of community and loyalty. Mark, did you want to say anything before we get going?
No, I think it's going to be interesting to dig into it as well. Customer loyalty it's one thing that certainly the last 18 months has been top of mind for everyone. So it's interesting to see how that's changed as well. Now you and I have got some strong feelings on what loyalty and experience mean for a company and a brand. So yeah, keen to dig in.
Yeah, we will jump into that. Just by way of background, so you know where the two of us are coming from. As you'll notice, we both have these giant things pointed at our faces. That's because Mark and I both work full-time in the podcasting industry. Mark is the creator and of a company called Rebel Base Media, and they make a variety of things, one of which is called Captivate.fm, which is a podcast hosting company, which not only do I use, but I'm also on the advisory board for. All the disclosures and disclaimers out there in space. And I own a production company here in Phoenix called Simpler Media. We make podcasts for big brands all around the world. So the two of us know a lot about the podcasting space, but that's not the only thing we know about. Mark and I have a shared ancestry in the fact that we both came out of the marketing world. Mark worked at branding agencies. I've ran digital advertising agencies here in Phoenix as well as in other places as well. So our experience is kind of well-rounded. There's lots of things we want to talk about, lots of things we can talk about sharing as it comes to building these communities. So again, thanks very much for joining us. Mark, let's start where you just mentioned a moment ago. The last 18 months, 12 months, whatever it's been for whomever it's been, has been really trying on all of our patience and souls and everything else when it comes to this idea of loyalty. So my first question to you is, do you think has the pandemic helped or hurt what customers expect, customer expectations and loyalty? Have we redefined things? We'll start with an easy question.
Warm-up question, just knocking the ball over the net there, are you? Yeah. I think it's amplified the extremes. And what I mean by that is that those that didn't care about customer loyalty and were very, very price driven, as an example, there are so many things that drive customers. Prices are obviously a determining factor for so many people. If someone is a price driven person, and the pandemic has amplified that. If someone is a brand driven person, or a person that thrives on an experience and kind of doesn't care about the price too much, it's amplified that. And I think when you got those kind of people, you know, the consumers on one side, and you've got the people that are providing the brand experiences on the other, I think each side has been amplified by the pandemic. It's forced those who are very good at what they do in terms of experience and loyalty to become even better, because the parameters have shifted, and those that weren't so good at it, they've either had to get better or they've just clearly got worse. So nothing stayed the same. And I think the word to take away from that is amplification of what already existed. It's been fascinating to see it as well, because so many people have initially got it wrong. You know, people in the small business space in particular have got a lot of this experience wrong in the early days of the pandemic, because we were all fighting, we were all on the back foot, we were all kind of on the defensive a little bit. And those that had to learn empathy didn't do so well in the early days, and they've started to do better, or many of them have started to do better as the pandemic's grown and developed. So it has been fascinating to see it develop. What about you? Do you think something similar? Or are you of a different mindset with that?
No, I think we're once again in definite agreement with one another. Everything has been made both worse, better, and bigger, all at the same time. It's this weird thing that we've all deal with, and I like what you were saying about, you know, it's such a big problem for startups, smaller businesses. You know, if you're enterprise level, you can probably adapt to anything because you have the resources, you have the cash flow, you have the things necessary, and plus also you can screw up a lot before a large enough section of your consumers or customers stop being loyal. But when you're smaller, when you're just starting out, especially in the startup world, that was harder to get through. I'm curious, since we have gotten through it, sort of. We're for the companies that have survived thus far, you know, from February of last year until now we're in April of this year. Clearly, there have been a lot of people who haven't made it, and that's unfortunate in many cases. But for those that have, I'm curious what the takeaway is this for you specifically and Captivate when it comes to customer experiences. And I don't just mean customer support, although we oftentimes conflate those two numbers, but have the lessons you have learned at Rebel Base Media and Captivate of how to deal with customers remotely. Are you taking those lessons forward and looking at a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, that's an interesting question to consider from a podcasting viewpoint. So a couple of kind of prefacing pieces on that one. We've always been quite brazen with our customer support and our customer loyalty and the way that we approach things. Our tone of voice as a brand is very brazen. That's because we didn't know any better back in the day, and it served us well. You know, I'm very much at the center of the brand tone of voice, as is Kieran, and we're English. We sort of don't sort of stand for any BS, and we call it out when we see it. So that's sort of the brand part of it, and that's just an interesting preface for what I get to next. The second part of it is that we've always been remote. In our earliest iterations of business in podcasting, which was our sort of agency as a service platform, podcast websites for WordPress for podcasters, we were working primarily in the US, just as we are with Captivate. So we've always had to be remote. We used to do in late sessions. We used to waking up at 4 a.m. to a Slack ping. We've learned from that. But, we used to kind of doing the time zone tweaks and that remote contextualizing of things. So we were perhaps slightly better prepared just by accident. That's just the nature of what we were facing. However, as classic business owners and startup founders and kind of techie people, I'm brand, I'm marketing, I'm sort of strategic vision and product vision. That's what I do. That's how my brain works. And Kieran's very technical. So the one thing that we didn't necessarily have on hand to start with was an abundance of empathy, just an understanding of what people were going through. And we never really needed it, because the only empathy that we really needed was, okay, this thing that we have built is potentially having an issue, or the consumers that are using the product want to be part of something bigger. So we didn't necessarily need empathy, because it was a very Boolean, very clear yes or no answer, or it was a community thing, which we would do by just naturally being, quite chatty people. So what happened when the pandemic kicked in that we will take forward is really, and this is an interesting balance to be able to strike, which I'm sure we'll get to, because you mentioned it earlier about, bigger organizations be able to handle cash flow better than a smaller startup. We had to really understand what was going on in people's day to day. My general stance is that if you start dropping F-bombs at my team, then it doesn't matter how much you pay me, you're not working with me, you're off the platform. You get one strike, if you do it again, you're out. That's it, it's a blanket, doesn't matter who you are, what you do, who you work for, you're out. But we had to become a little bit more sympathetic with that, because there were people that were, they were losing their jobs. They were unable to carry on doing what they were doing. And we were just the first person that day that they had come across that they needed to interact with, for whatever reason, whether it was a support thing or whether it was just a question about payment or whatever. If we were the first people they interacted with, we got the outpouring of stress. And we had to very, very quickly adjust. The attitude that I stand by, we had to understand that there was a lot more nuance to that. These people weren't reacting like that because they were the people that we didn't want to work with, and there was the types of people that would always react like that. They were reacting like that because something else was happening. The pandemic was happening. Their jobs were on the line. Their families were struggling. Maybe illness had struck the family. And I think that layer of empathy is something that, like, personally as a founder, and Kieran as well, my co-founder, as you know, we're very similar people, all three of us. That's something that we will absolutely take away from that. That's not to say that we'll soften our stance, but it is to say that we'll probably ask more probing questions earlier to get to the bottom of what's really going on with someone. Having a bad day is more common the last 12 months, and we've got to bear that in mind. So that's definitely something that we'll take forward. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'm with you there on the question of empathy. I, by nature, am not really all that empathetic of a person or sympathetic of a person, as my wife of 31 years will attest to. But nonetheless, we've all had to adopt, because you're right. There's one thing about having a bad day. There's another thing about, just the horrendousness we've all kind of been forced to deal with. And yeah, I think it's caused all of us to be, and the problem with it is that those same externalities impact us. We didn't lose our jobs, luckily, and our livelihood was either impacted or slightly impacted, whatever. But nonetheless, those same externalities hit us. And when we're trying to turn around and be empathetic, when we're delivering that customer experience, it's tough on both sides, because it's bad things here and there everywhere. Let's talk about, you brought up community a moment ago, because there's responding to customers directly. I have a problem. I want to talk to the company, or I have something positive to say, or whatever. I just need to interact with the people. That's one thing. But I think that's a much bigger play out there, where people get to share their own experiences with other customers. To me, it's a bonus anytime that you can get your customers to do customer service for you and provide that customer experience. It's great. Although, is it? Because there's a lot of control you don't have. So my first question to you is just as generally about customer or consumer advocates. Do you in general find them to be all positive, all negative, or kind of somewhere in between?
Well, I think you only ever hear about the negative ones. I'll wake up in our advisor chat, one morning and someone will have posted, "Did you see this on Facebook?" You're like, yeah, we saw that one out of the 10,000 on Facebook. Of course we did. And you've got to build a bit of resilience on that one. There are always people, no matter what you do. Like, we've built startups before, we've exited startups before, we've built tools, we've had agencies, we've done all sorts of stuff. And the one rule of thumb throughout all of it, and you'll have had the same thing, is that you only ever hear about the negativity. The people who really want to shout about you doing a great job forget, because they're too busy enjoying the fact that you do a great job, and they're doing their thing that you've enabled because of the great job that you're doing. It's the people that are a little bit annoyed that you hear about. So community is vital. Like, you can't help that a community will exist around your product. What you can do is you can own it. And what a lot of people tend to do off the back of that is then they think that they can control it. And that's the next lesson to learn, is that you can never control anything. What you can do is be consistent. So community is a great thing. There will always be an overwhelming, if you do your job properly, which anyone that has the guts to put a product out or a service out, they will do their job properly. No one sets up in business to do a bad job. Some of them do a bad job, but it's because they're learning It's never because they're doing it on purpose, or it rarely is, and they don't last long. So what a lot of people tend to do is they will go ahead and they will just focus on the negative stuff. And then what they'll try and do is they'll try and control that negative stuff, and they'll try and control the community. So positive and negatives are always good. But the resounding lesson that we've learned over the years is, and I sort of looked into this because I think I'm sort of naive, or I used to be naive. I mean, that's an age thing. Like, I used to be much more naive. I'm sure in 10 years I'll look back and go, Ivo, how did you work with me? Man, I was so naive back then. But like in my 20s, I was so brash and brazen. And I know you were the same, and I know Kieran was the same. Like, we're a very similar personality, like I said, in that no one ever scared me, which sounds weird. So what I would do is, I would treat the person that I was having a drink with, you and I, at a meetup at Podcast Movement, I would have the same conversation with you that I'd have with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I've done that. It was the same, and people are shocked by it. To me, I'm not doing anything different. Now, why is that important for community? Well, because that is what your brand needs to do in order to sort of try and control the community. Because like I said, positivity, negativity, they will all exist. But the only thing that you can control, you can't control them. You can't control what they say. You can't be clever. You can't reply in comments with sanctimonious, condescending replies that a lot of brands and a lot of people want to do. They want to become defensive. They want to become defensive. They want to they want to see the comment that someone either negatively or positively has said and pick that one bit out that they can build a wall around and defend and defend and defend. What you can't do is get into that position, because when you get into that, you can't get your brand out of it ever. You can't, unless you hire in and you really go at it hard. So what you got to do is you got to have that same approach that I had back in the day, and even still now, which is to treat everyone the same. It's to be open and honest. It's not to use company language. It's not to fake we. It's always I. It's, look, I screwed up. Oh, here's this thing that's a problem. Here's why it's a problem. And you've got to really, really own that. Now, the biggest way that you can do that is to genuinely be the same to everyone. So someone that's positive and negative, you just be the same kind of person. Open, fair, honest. Have the ability to listen. Learn that empathy that we talked about. And that positivity and that negativity, what happens then is, my favorite sort of people are the ones that even out. So what I'm talking about here is that I relish the people that are going crazy at me. The people, and I've had it, it's rare, touch wood. It's going to happen tomorrow now, isn't it? But the people that go crazy at me for some reason. And we've had it, where someone may have done something and they've, deleted their podcast. And we've had it, and we've always got it in backup. It's fine. But they go crazy. And I help them so much. And it's me that helps them. And, I will genuinely, the next time I see them, take them out for dinner with everyone else that I take for dinner, because that's what we do at meetups and so on. And they slowly realize that I'm just a person getting up, eating my muesli, having my cup of tea, turning on my computer, seeing this thing, handling this thing, and then going out and getting the mail. They sort of start to see that we're all just people, and that tips them into being very, very positive advocates. So positivity and negativity, they're sort of born of the same willingness to just want to share something. And like I said, the key takeaway from that is that whatever it is, positive or negative, you should never defend it. And then, I'm guilty of doing this, and I regularly have to learn not to quickly reply to things. I have to just walk. I have to get the mail. I have to go and make a brew. And no one's ever out to wrong you. Like, they haven't got time for that. They don't want to do that. They're not interested in that. And we see it. I mean, you and I see it in our industry a lot. There's a lot of people that just want to defend, and it's not a way to build community or build a business. So yeah, you got to handle the positive, you got to handle the negative, but the key takeaway, the understanding is that no one's out for personal gain. And if they are, it becomes very, very clear very, very quickly. And believe me, that's like 0.01% of people. They're usually out to be heard. That's all they want, recognition. They just want to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. In my experience, anybody who has it out for me personally, is because I've done something specifically to warrant said behavior, right? It's really rare when it happens. It was interesting what you brought up about the humanity feature. Be yourself, be whether that's be who you are. I think we're starting to see that come out more and more, and maybe thanks to, again, the pandemic, where we're all locked at home, and the people who are providing the customer experience support are now doing it from their homes, where they feel a lot more comfortable and they feel a lot more relaxed. I mean, I've had interactions with large companies that just feel different over the last 12 months than they felt over the prior years. I'm getting a lot less of the we, it is much more of an I. And they're also apologizing for silly things like the mail is ridiculous right now. Just getting stuff and not getting stuff, it's a 50-50 chance whether the thing you order is actually going to show up on time or not, regardless of what the tracking information say. So to me, the most successful companies I've interacted with when things have gone bad aren't the ones who say, oh, that's the shipping company's problem, it's not mine. But it's those who recognize, look, we chose that shipping company. We need that shipping company, and we, the company, have to take some responsibility for that. So just being empathetic and saying, I'm sorry that they lost your stuff. Let's see what we can do on our end to get another shipment out as fast as possible goes a long way, as opposed to take that crap up with UPS. It's just, you kind of lose it. You just kind of lose it.
Yeah, you do.
So loyalty, customer advocates. I'm loyal to the grocery store that I visit for one reason and one reason. Well, two reasons. One, I can literally walk across the street to get there. But also, they've got the fuel card. I don't know how it works over where you're at, but with us, the more groceries we buy, the more points we get off when we go pick up the petrol, as you would say, down the street, right? And it saves me, 40 cents a gallon. I'll let you convert it. And so that's cool and all. But when we're a small business, when we're a startup, and we're not monetarily rewarding our customer advocates and those who are loyal to us, how do we do it? How do you do it? How do you, without making, I know you have an affiliate program, but what else are you doing to keep advocates advocating on your behalf and keeping people loyal to your brand?
Talking to them. Like, I am front and center with Captivate. The buck stops with me. If we make a mess of it, it's on me. If someone's getting grief in support, I'm the one that sorts it, because everything stops with me. That's on me. If Kieran makes a technical boo-boo, my fault because I let him do it. It's my fault because I didn't spot it. If we put something out that's wrong, I'm the one that owns it. And the way that translates into any business is that it's all about discussion. It's all about talking. It's all about, this brand, this company does business how Mark does business, which is honest and open and very, very transparently, where you can be transparent. There's some stuff that you can't be transparent with, there's some stuff that you can't be, because it would cause you other issues. As an example, right. If you're having a problem with a podcasting platform, like we've experienced the last couple of weeks, there's only so much that you can tell your customers, because if you tell them everything, you create more anxiety for them. So, it's about that transparency, but in such a way that shows caring and understanding of what your people are going through. So that's the key thing. I am front and center, like the butchers who live down the road from my granddad's, and we shopped there for 40 years. And if it was open today, I would still shop there today. Not because the meat's any better or the prices are any better, but because the person behind the counter would say, how's work? It's been a while. You've not been in for 2 weeks. And that translates to this online world. We're also used to traffic and conversion rates, and we're also used to measuring KPIs and making sure that things stack up from a digital perspective, that we sometimes forget that all you've got to do to build a business is just be around. I built Captivate and Kieran built Captivate on the basis of 5 years of spending our own money traveling to conferences and having beer with people. And just, that was the single best marketing that we did, was just to be around. And it wasn't a marketing ploy. We just enjoyed it. So when we spotted a problem, it was like, wait a sec, I've known this guy for 5 years. He's always seemed pretty fair, and he's always done right by us. He's got a new platform. We should like, what's the worst that can happen if we take a look? It's probably going to be imbued with his sense of business and of transparency and honesty. So that's what you can do, is you can put yourself front and center. Now, a lot of people will say that doesn't scale. You can't scale a business doing that. And I would disagree with that, because logistically, you can't do the things that you want to do when you get to a certain threshold. You can't do the one-to-one calls. For the first 8 months of Captivate, I personally did customer support. When we got to thousands and thousands of customers, I couldn't do it. I just didn't have the bandwidth. So was Kieran. He was doing it, and we just didn't. If we did it, nothing else would change. We couldn't grow the business, and we couldn't serve people. So we hired the right people in. And with podcast websites, we work with thousands and thousands and thousands of customers, and legitimately every single one of those customers had 30 minutes with me. Legitimately, for years we did that. I was doing calls at 11 p.m. at night. Now, a lot of people, like I said, they say that doesn't scale, but it does. So what I mean by that is that I take everything that I believe, all of those approaches, and our staff are trained up in that playbook. Here's how we handle things. And if someone is struggling with something, here's how we handle it. This is how I would handle it, not how the customer experience and customer loyalty handbooks out there will teach you. Not to say that the customer is always right. Not to say, I'm going to show fake empathy and fake authenticity. It's to do it as if every person is the most important customer that you've got. So to translate that through to like the how, what does that actually look like in practice? It becomes really desperately about constantly timed messages. So when you anticipate what someone wants, you have to get there first. You've got to close the barriers down. You've got to make them feel wanted. You've got to invite them to be a part of something, because that's all people want. They sign up to a platform or they buy from a business as a utility. That just ticks a box. It's something that they need to do because for whatever reason, there's a need that has arisen. The rest of it, how you make them feel, the good experiences that you give them, are the things that make them stick around. They're the things that breed the loyalty. And how you talk to them, just some would say unprofessionally. I've always talked to you as, "Hi mate, how you doing?" And I will always talk to all my customers as, "Hi mate, how you doing? Good to see you." And then if you tell me what's going on in your life, you say, "Do you know what? I'm having a rough day. Been in for an operation. Here's the thing that's happened to me. This is why I'm so stressed about my podcast." In 6 months when we talk, I will remember that. And I will ask how the knee is and the leg is. We got someone last week. I do these things called, and this is a real kicker for loyalty. I'm a big fan of what I call a presence promise. So the fact that I promise to be present every week, same bat time, same bat channel, same bat place, every single week, 11 a.m. Eastern. I'm in our Facebook group live, and anyone can come. They can ask me questions. There was a chap came on this week. He joined Podcast Websites about 6 years ago. And on that very first call, I remembered 5 years ago that he was getting married the week after. And this Friday, I was like, "Stephen, it's your anniversary, isn't it? Happy anniversary."
Oh, wow.
He was blown away. But it's happened every year. Every year he's had the same thing. Now, it's not difficult to do that, but no one does it because it's something that feels hard. But it's not. About your friends, about the people in your village or your town, the people that you interact with all the time. And those guys aren't giving you money. You owe them something better. So there's a lot to unpack in that. I realize that I digressed a little bit.
No, it's quite right. I like it. I was staring off because a friend of mine, his name is Jay Bear. He used to live here in Phoenix. He now lives in Indianapolis.
Jay,
And Jay, right? How can you not know Jay in this world, right? So
host on Captivate, actually.
Does he now? No, that's great. Good news. Good news. Convince and convert. So Jay and I were speaking. He was actually a guest of a big customer experience podcast we put together for SAP recently called Experience. And I'm reminded of some words that Jay said that really boils down customer experience. I'm going to say these 3 words. And by the way, to the audience out there, if you have any questions, we have about 19 minutes left of our talk. Please raise your hand, ask a question, and we'll definitely want to give you plenty of time to have some conversation here. But the things Jay said is, look, customers really only want three things from any organization. They want you to be quick, they want you to be clear, and they want you to be kind. Quick, clear, and kind. That's it. If you can do those three things consistently, you win. You'll develop loyal customers and do it. And it's hard to deliver all of those things consistently all the time. But if you can manage it, you'll knock it out of the park every time. So,
yeah, that's huge. And I think the clarity is the key thing. There are a lot of people who build businesses based on how complex they make the thing that they sell, because to them, that's kind of all they have. And you see this in developing industries. You see this in nascent tech industries all the time. We see it in podcasting, where something that once was complicated is not protected from developmental change. And
right.
When developmental change comes along, simplicity is dragged along with it, because for an industry to grow, for anything to grow, things become reduced in their complexity. Inevitably, it's easier to do X than it ever has been today. It's easier to do Y than it ever has been until this point. And next year, it will be easier and easier and easier
right.
and easier. And the people that do well are the people that embrace that clarity and look to clarify the next piece of the complexity puzzle that's a little bit further away. So, okay, what will we be clarifying in 2 years' time that is a little complex now? The people, the incumbents, let's talk banking, let's talk insurance, let's talk a lot of fintech, let's talk anything around health and social care. They're the things that we're on the cusp of solving and making much more simple now, that have always been these institutionalized problems. And right at the forefront of that is now, because of the pandemic, to bring it full circle back to that, now at the forefront, you've got your challenger banks, you've got your challenger insurance companies, you've got people like Zazu Africa that are bringing instant banking across low data societies. And you've got people that are on the other end of that because of the pandemic, fielding the calls and saying, do you know what? I'm glad you've called, because I'm having a nightmare day. My kid's doing X, or, the neighbor outside is cutting the lawn. And suddenly they're the same people as you that are answering the call.
Right.
And so these big banks are becoming more human. If you think about a big bank over here or in the US, they weren't allowed to be more human, but they've been forced to be. And now a lot of that experience is on par with the challenger banks. And that's a really leveling example of how the pandemic has made people rethink what is all right. And loyalty, like you said, it comes from speed, clarity, and kindness.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to wrap that up into one specific, I want to say one specific package, but it's not quite the right word, is to just wrap it up as just being a fair, honest person, and not forgetting that just because you're in business, you know better than the people that buy from you. And that's really difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, for me, quick, no problem. Clear, pretty clear most of the time. Kindness, I'm working on it. I'm getting there. Slowly.
You're like the 10th most kind person I know, Ivo.
Well, then 9 jerks in your life. Anyhow, just so that Kate, whoever's behind the scenes at Phoenix Startup Week, knows, I'm not seeing any questions come across. So if there are any, feel free to just jump on in with said question, and I suppose somebody could raise their hand. Mark, we still have 15 minutes or so left here. I'm going to ask you to break out your crystal ball, which we always have to do at least once during a conversation. But instead of projecting what you and I normally project all the time, which is what's the future of podcasting look like, I want to think more from customer expectations. We've just gone through 12 to 18 months worth of massive change, what people want from their experiences. So we've been forced to deal with the future, but that's the weird thing about the future. It keeps coming. How do you specifically think about the next unit of time? I'm not even going to say 5 years, the next unit of time, bracing for all of the changes. You work in the digital industry, podcast hosting and everything related to podcasting, which you're involved with. All of it is subject to massive commoditization, externalities, other challenges that are facing it. We are living through massive upheaval in the podcasting space. And if you're listening to this or watching us and you're not in podcasting, now's a good time not to be in podcasting because we are undergoing some massive tectonic shifts. And sometimes I feel like it's a subduction plate and we're just stuck. Anyhow, what are you thinking about the future when we don't know what the future is going to bring in the customer experience world? Keep building loyalty, keep building community, making sure that people stay with us. How do we anticipate those needs before they change?
Yeah, it's a tough situation because I think overlaid on top of customer expectations and you know the requirements to just run a base level good quality business, you've got a lot to consider now when it comes to tech challenges. You've got so many siloed places where people can form communities of their own and discuss the thing that you are building that you might not know about. You know, there's so many now niche communities forming. You know, before, and I say before, I'm talking like a year ago, it was just, well, you're on Slack or you're on Reddit or you're on Facebook, maybe you're on Discord. But now we're seeing things like Mighty Networks pop up, and we're seeing so many different community tools popping up that people like Clubhouse, you know, someone can create a Captivate podcast chat room on Clubhouse, and I've got nothing to do with it. You know, that could happen, and fair enough. But I think you've got to anticipate the choice that people will have, and I think the way to navigate that for a small business in particular, if you're a big business, you hire in. You know, you can handle that. That becomes fairly easy. Your community manager can handle all these things, and then you hire a community team, and it's just scale. But as a small business, I think what you've got to do is decide where you will always be and just mark your territory. You know, get there and be there, but don't just say you're going to be there and then not show up. Don't just say, yeah, you know, we kind of do Facebook groups and we got a Facebook group and, you know, we dip in every now and again. Like, if you're going to be there, you have got to be there, and you have got to be there all the time. Because what happens then is that inevitably there's the Venn diagram of people. You know, you've got, let's assume for argument's sake, you use an old school Facebook group as your community method. Mm-hmm. You know, the tech around that might be, well, there's a Clubhouse group over here. There's a Discord channel over here. There's all sorts of things. There's Mastodon and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. That Venn diagram of people will cross over. You know, people will be on Clubhouse, but also see you in Facebook. And if you own that channel, and if you are in there consistently, really being good as a person, people will refer. So someone will, Clubhouse will say, actually, you know, that thing that you just said, Mr. Moderator, that's created this room, that's actually not quite right, because if you look here, here's the resource that shows that that's wrong. Okay. So this customer advocacy, you scale it, and it's difficult. You know, like all the entrepreneurs online, they just go be everywhere, and you can't. It's impossible. No. Like, how are you earning money if you're everywhere? And that's what, you can't build a community if you're not building a business. That's right. So you have to earn the revenue. So that would be a very simple prediction. Would be, we're going to go horizontally with tech. There's going to be so much more tech just sprouting up. We've seen it so often. Like, I'm doing 4 or 5 virtual seminars. You know, we're using Zoom for this one. Then there's Pine, and there's Hoover, and there's like 10 different things I'm using this week, all to do this. Just stake your claim and be there. It's tough though. It is tough.
It's hard to predict when we don't know what's happening. Kate, you've popped in to say hello or to give us some questions.
Yeah, we have 3 questions for you guys.
Go for it.
Okay, the first one. Have you heard of human experience and user experience? If yes, what's the difference between them and customer experience?
I'll start. So I've not heard, they may just be synonymous terms, right? Back in the day, and I'm talking like back in the 90s, there was a degree you could get called human interface design or something, human interaction design, something along those lines, right? And it was a psychology meets tech. And the idea was, we're going to have psychologists teach us how to lay out websites. really the basic idea from it. But today, I think those are blended terms. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's human experience is in my view, it's sort of the entire experience that someone has with your brand. So you got user experience is very much like we do a lot of that planning with Captivate. So you'll build a user experience underneath a user interface. So the user experience design through Gaz and myself will be supported by an interface that allows you to do the thing that you want to do. And it's all about making that a good experience. Customer experience is very much the interaction touch points. And the human experience for me is very much everything encapsulated into one. How do I interact on social media? What's my experience with that brand on Trustpilot? Or when I put a customer support request, how I interact with the product, what are their blog posts and their content marketing like? Do they talk in one way on their content, but actually their support team is really not that friendly when you really start to pay them? And I think that human experience design is, it's fascinating because I think a lot of founders build it in naturally. Like Kieran and I have never consciously, until, I don't know, the last year, focused on human experience because inherently we're not bad people. We just do good work and we try to do our best. And if we don't do our best and something goes wrong, we own it. And that actually is a good human experience. So I think that's really sort of the phrase that a lot of people are hooking to now around the holistic approach of a brand.
Which would be a good idea. We could be more holistic about that. Definitely. What's question number 2, Kate?
Yeah, we have on Reddit, people can be suspicious in nature. I've seen in threads where multiple people jump on a thread and continue to stroke the negativity. I guess you can call them trolls. Hold on. Well, there's more. No, that's it. That's the question. Okay.
That's the comment.
What do you guys think about Reddit?
Mark, are you a big Reddit user?
I used to be, but people were stroking the negativity too much. It's a nightmare. It's a funny scenario. Like you will get that, and some communities and platforms foster that a little bit because they've got a little bit more of an open approach to allowing people to do various things. One of the most difficult things to understand as a founder is that you can spend years building your reputation and your platform, only for someone that's annoyed and having a bad day for some other reason to come along and destroy it in a second. And there are only 2 things that you can do to combat that. And it doesn't matter the platform. You can do 2 things and you should always stand by them and you should never back down from them. The 2 things that you should do, and then I'll talk about how you back that up: factfulness and kindness. So you can never be defensive. You can never defend something unless you can simply point out there are facts that show that that thing is not to be defended, but it's not quite accurate. And the way that you underpin that, the way that you uphold those 2 things, we do it all the time. A lot of people, what's the best between Captivate and X, or, who's the best? And some of the other people in the industry will come along and they'll go, well, these guys suck. And my answer is always, do you know what? Everyone's good people and they all do good work and they all want to just treat you very well. Choose who you want, enjoy, but I'll be around to help anytime you want. And the underpinning lesson with this one is that the customer is not always right. The customer is always loud. And that's all right. That's their job, is to be loud because it makes us better. Our job is to discern the difference between what they're really asking and what they're loudly saying. And if we can figure that out, then we will do so much better. So kindness and factfulness, but the confidence to understand that just because you're seeing something written down doesn't mean that it's right. And I think if you can stick to that, you'll sleep better at night. I learned that the hard way. You will genuinely sleep better at night.
Definitely
I
true.
can't help but bring up the 4 agreements right now, where so often people take things really personally, and that is what leads their responses.
Yeah, definitely.
Huge.
What's our last question?
Yep. I'm 22 years old, ready to start my canine care business. What are some ways I can increase the credibility of my brand to my older clients?
So there's an old marketing trope.
You're closer to 22 than I was, so go for it.
I don't know about that either. I feel like I'm going to look at the gray on the sides.
Stop.
The old marketing trope is people buy from people. And older people hold that in such high esteem, and rightly so. Younger people do. They just don't think they do until they get older and realize that social media generally doesn't matter. So older people and people who want you to take the thing that they love in the top 5 things the most in their entire life. And I'm only saying top 5 because some of them have got kids. You're taking their dog, you're taking the thing that they see every day and taking it away from them, and you're expected to be trusted with it. So the one thing that you can do is be around for that person. Like I said earlier on, get to know them, understand them, ask about a particular animal. It's not just a project, it's not just an animal, it's actually, it's a part of their life. Get to know that thing. And I know that's really cliched and obvious, but if you spend 3 minutes extra talking to each one of your customers who you might think is at risk of not trusting you, that time is so valuable because they want to see the person that is looking after their pride and joy, the thing that they love. And it's, a lot of people say that's not marketing, but it's the most basic, old school, been around since the dawn of time marketing that there is. So do more of that. Definitely do more of that.
I'll chime in with one last thing about that. This is something that I try and emulate every single day in the podcasting space, where I've been around since the beginning. I mean, literally, this is 16 years I've been in podcasting. So it's as long as anyone you know, I've been doing this. But what I try and counsel all the other old men like myself is that we need the young, fresh thoughts coming in. We really do. There's sometimes I want stability, age, and wisdom, but I also want plenty of youth, vigor, and doing things a completely different way. So that's not an exact answer to the question, but more of a embrace the fact that you're 22 and you have new ideas and you want to do something different with this industry, if in fact that's what you've done, and jump in with both feet and start representing yourself as the person who's respectful of the way things were. Sure, I get that, but also there are some new things we can do because it's 2021, not 2019 any longer, which those 2 years is a big difference in and of itself.
Mark, Ivo, thank you so much for this lively conversation. Back to the basics, back to the fundamentals: trust, safety, empathy. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
it solves most problems, right?
Fundamentals are often what the thing that you go. If you haven't got those right, how are you going to do anything else?
What do you got?
So,
yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Be well. We are so appreciative of your time and your expertise. Our community as a whole thanks you. So we're going to sign off for now and then join back in a few minutes for our next session. Take care, guys. Thank you.